whatever kind of day it is. So, right. So, I'm Sherlina Nageer. I'm Sherlina, and I will be facilitating this afternoon's event along with Tivia, who is going to be monitoring the online Zoom part of this. It's a hybrid event. So we're here in the Breadfruit office. For some of you, I think it's the first time some people are coming to the space. It's in the heart of Georgetown, Charlestown. I don't know if the camera can see the poster of the banner of Andaiye behind us. Right, so the folks who are not here, we're sitting underneath Andaiye's face, and this is where I first met Andaiye, in this location in 2009, when I migrated to Guyana and started doing work with Breadfruit. So for me to be here today having this conversation about Andaiye and her work and what we learned, yeah, I can literally feel her spirit, because she used to be right in the front here, occupying space. So I'm very glad that we are having this conversation here, and I feel her presence. So before we get into the day, the afternoon, I do want to just acknowledge the context in which we are living and organizing. There's a lot to say about that, but just to acknowledge, two things. So one is that last Thursday would be the four years since we lost Andaiye in 2019. Okay, yes. I mixed up with the dates, but just the last week was a 4-year anniversary. So, it seems like just recently that happened. And then we're just 2 weeks after this tragedy in Madia, the fire at the dorms that over 20 children were lost, and just the way that the response of the state as well as the society, it's been very disturbing to me on multiple levels. And I often think, times like this, what would Andaiye say? How would she respond? And that kind of helps me. It guides my response to a lot of things. But so maybe before we get started more, we could just take a moment of silence, maybe, in recognition of the lives that were lost in Madia. Okay. So, Tivia, do you want to say a few words?
Thank you, Nina. Thank you to those of us who are here and also for those of you joining us online. Today, really it's a moment for us to engage in community sharing and keep learning. And the Institute of Gender Studies at the University of Guyana, of course, will continue to do the work that's necessary with the Guyana Gender Hub, with Red Bread, and with the Breadfruit Collective. And so today I'm just really looking forward to hearing the ways in which Andaiye's work has impacted many of us over the years. And really looking forward to sharing that we're going to engage with this afternoon. So without further ado, I would just go on and introduce very quickly two-liner for all of our speakers. So first, we're going to be hearing from Salima Hinds. Salima is a Guyanese feminist, and she's a member of the Tamake Feminist Collective. She has an interest in creating feminist community and action. Then we're going to hear from Lisa Edwards. Lisa is a research assistant at the Institute for Gender Studies at the University of Guyana, and she's continuously fascinated and excited about gender work and always open to working with others. Then we're going to hear from Vidyaratha Kissoon. Vidya met Andaiye in 1996, and this is when he started volunteering with Help and Shelter, and he's been involved in the work of gender equality ever since then. Then we're going to hear from Christine Sawmaroo. Christine is an intersectional feminist, and she's the founder of Breadfruit Collective. She's a gender and environmental justice worker, and her NGO focuses on that work. And she will also speak briefly as well this afternoon. And then we will hear from Wintress White,
who is a longtime member of Red Bread. I think the majority of her life she did that work, so she'll be joining us.
She'll be joining us on Zoom. Yeah. So without further ado, we'll hand over to Salima.
Thank you, Tivia. I actually got this book because book club. This is a selection of us to read. For me, it's a time to read because I'm trying to incorporate more feminist knowledge in my practice. And sometimes it feels that a lot of the words and what's published out there is rooted in American feminism, which really has some important lessons, but I also want to make a more deliberate effort to understand Caribbean feminism and grow my work in Guyanese feminist action and knowledge. And the Point to Change the World, I think, offers something that's immensely valuable to the work that we do, or even if you're not doing this work, but you're just interested to learn a little more about Guyanese history and the way women are positioned in our history. This is a really important book. So I want to start with a quote that really stood out for me this week. I really needed to hear these words because, as Nina mentioned, there's a lot has been happening, even more than usual in Guyana in the last couple of weeks. And for me personally, it's been a lot. It's been really heavy, and I really needed to hear these words, to read these words. So Andaiye says, to stop sinking under the weight of our pessimism about our capacity to fight against capitalism, we have to take inspiration from our own history and from the history of other countries, learn the lessons of their weaknesses, setbacks, and failures, and build their strengths. We have to learn from the willingness of those who fought before us to take the risk of rising up against seemingly immovable forces. And that was something that I really needed to hear. That quote is taken at the end of this book, in essay 26, page 242. I think those words serve as a testament to the importance of community in any resistance, in any rebellion. It's a reminder to myself about the community I aim to build with Tamake feminists, and the principles of our practice are grounded in learning, sharing, self-reflection, and disruption. And I was a Guyanese feminist and activist who has left an undeniable mark on the women's rights landscape in Guyana and throughout the wider Caribbean region. I have never met her personally like Vidya and Lena have, or I have not worked with her. For a very long time, I was unaware of her contributions, unfortunately. But without a doubt, my work and my activism is influenced by Andaiye through my experiences as a Guyanese activist, all ages and genders. So working with video, working with Lena, working with members of Help and Shelter, I think I do see the influence of her work and her passion. And it has definitely made a contribution to my own life and my own work. So my overall reflections on this book, which I think does a really good job of capturing Andaiye's activism and her politics over the decades. This has entered my life at a very right time as I contemplate my own years working in the NGO sector. And that reflects on the NGOization of feminist activism and the ways resistance has sometimes been co-opted in service of neoliberal principles. And I know it's, and I mean, this is like speaking about my own life too, right? Agencies pay me to design, implement, evaluate sustainable development projects and programs which cannot transform the lives of poor women, their beneficiaries. When the macroeconomy is premised on the increased exploitation of their unwaged and low-wage work. As an unwaged NGO worker, a large part of my work involves projects which provide poor women with services which government should be provided and retained for all women. Thus, I end up helping to provide services for a few women instead of challenging the economic model that prevents governments from providing services to all women. End of quote. I agree, right? The movement has been diluted to track targets, beneficiaries, and deliverables, and to produce annual reports. Feminist language is politely shifted to gender development, with a reluctance to actively name ways patriarchy, capitalism, and imperialism directly harms all women and all people whose very existence threatens established norms and power structures. There's no lie when they say the revolution will not be funded. It will not be funded, it will not be appropriately registered, it will not have a board of directors. Yeah. It just will. And as I read Andaiye's thoughts about all the ways that Caribbean feminism has failed to deliver, ignoring class, caught up in providing services and managing donors, and her own role within that deficiency, I seriously wonder, how was she able to reconcile that? How was she able to reconcile what she wanted to see happen in terms of massive changes versus what she was actually doing? Did she ever find a happy medium? Is a happy medium even possible? Perhaps not. And these are questions I ask myself too. The reality is that the traditional donor funding models that we work with does depoliticize our work and ultimately defines women's empowerment as women having access to traditional middle-class gender roles. So what does that mean when we have work to do? Work that needs funding. Where does this leave us? What does change ultimately end up looking like for us? What does movement building look like? What are we leaving for the next generation of Guyanese feminists? And I hope we take those questions and we touch today. Your personal life, your work life, what is our work transforming? What does transformation actually look like? Or what would success or community look like for us in the more. I don't think it's all hopeless. And others have provided the answers. And that's why I'm practically happy that we really have this collection. The point to change the world, I really hope that the point to change the world sets the foundation for more contemporary feminist literature and thoughts. Maybe one day I'll listen to that. So I really do hope to see a lot of work published from Caribbean feminists, from Guyanese feminists. I think it's really important for building. I think of my own experiences when I had returned to Guyana in 2017 after studies, and I was really desperate to find a feminist community in Guyana that I felt connected to, that I felt like I had access to. We have a lot of women's rights spaces, but it doesn't necessarily make them feminist spaces, which is important for me. And at times it did feel isolating. So there's something really affirming about reading this book, about recognizing my own experiences and Andaiye's experiences. And there's something comforting and grounding in knowing that I can build on the work led by organizations such as Red Thread, that have been doing this work for decades. Finally, I hope we can keep building. And I want to return to the first quote, which is that we really need to build by taking inspiration from our history. We need to learn from the actions that have had a good impact, what has happened in the past. We need to also look at what didn't work. And then build on the strength of actions and the collective movement we have worked in the past. So reflecting on what has worked, what hasn't worked, and how does that shape our present and our future moving forward.
It's really powerful, Salima, and it's a lot really to reflect. When you talk about the NGOization of our work, it's scary, especially when you noted that we work to produce reports, right? I think that really struck home with me. It's something I've always asked is how do we fund the revolution, right? So I think that's a continuous question, and Andaiye's work really just allows us to think through a lot of these things. And we'll move right along to Lisa, who's joining us from IGSUG. Take it over.
Thank you, Tivia. So I want to start off by saying that the first time I actually reading this name Andaiye, I was outside in a classroom outside of there, specifically in its Marionette, KPL, Tivia. During their studies. That was also my first time out of the country. So here I am reading this name, seeing how she's being recognized, looking at the type of her work, not only in Guyana, regionally, even internationally. And it kind of bred in me some form of effect, being Guyana, seeing Guyana women in this way, right? But also extending that identity as a Caribbean person. And then the questions came later, like, why am I only reading about it? And also, where was this person's last name? Custom with a singular name, but it piqued my interest in terms of digging deep into who this person. I was like, I gotta read this book. Never mind, I had student assessments, my own reading, because whether I was just trying to distract myself, I was like, I gotta read this. Nothing else will happen if I don't read this book. So, reading through the book, the first thing that stood out for me is that it served as a historical text. So coming up in a home where I have my Indian grandmother, big woman, black grandmother, and a black man. And so the running joke is that when he reaches home, she is already coming back, looking at my household with new lens, right? I couldn't just let it be as it was. How do I begin to make those shifts individually, but also seeing my mother to join where coming from is being the army. The point where it opened up and has nice in my own relationship with my mother. So it's like you had this push and pull going back, because you can't just sit and disallow and I'm supposed how I now new values I have in myself, right? This became equally important when my role extended in the classroom, talking to people, providing resources, engaging with them from different backgrounds, different lived experiences. How do I now share this here with them when my own self, my own value is not in alignment with what I'm learning, right? And reading through her work, the reflexivity embedded in her writing. Sorry, I get something. Alright, so second point that really stood out for me is the reflexivity that were embedded in her writing, politics, care work, all these. And it informed my consciousness with our education, making sure that they have a space with them not shutting it. That's enough. Also asking questions, right? I haven't quite find that balance actually kind of hitting that. It's still that tug of war, that happiness when you're questioning whether So that's what we are. It's funny enough that can also be contentious in the past. Right? So that was a major point I saw from the hub is community. And just the other day I had a classmate, now friend, message me and she was like, do something. I have someone coming from Barbados, is there anything you want me to bring for you? And I'm like, said Barbados being expensive. Right? I was like, if you pick me later tonight or some days later, and I'll have a conversation with myself. I mean, I do talk to myself from time to time, right? And I'll have a conversation and I'm like, coming up with the pandemic, feeling isolated, feeling like you're alone, the kind of isolation that's being talked about, doing this work and looking for spaces in our own context. And it hit me that I do have to communities here. Then it made me question myself. How do I show up in this community? How do I acknowledge my presence, my power in terms of participating in the community? I would desire I'd like to have, right? So those are actually areas critical reference and flexibility, the way Andaiye talks about her community, as she tackled her own challenges and so on. Really still have to be during this text. Of course, though I could settle on one, that kind of stuff was that change is individual, but it's also collective, which I think is very cool. So even though individually I might know changing my viewpoint about change, not enough to create anything, but we don't have engagement with others in the different spaces that I engage in. Thank you so much. Tivia?
Great. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
A lot to talk about. So we're going to continue with Vidya.
Okay, so you can hear me from here. Yeah. Okay. Right.
Project.
I feel like in school now. So hi everyone here and online. Please bear with me as I do a little bit of into myself. I'm grateful to Breadfruit, Salima, Christine, Tina, Tivia, Lisa, Lena, and Tara for creating this space today. As Lisa said, it looks like outside of an organization with a board of directors and membership and etc. Right? I'm grateful to Andaiye and all the teachers who were connected with helping show this work, and that's where I first came to work around gender. And I continue to learn from survivors of gender-based violence about the experience of violence and ways of healing from the violence. So this week, Breadfruit organized protests against the murder charges laid against a 50-year-old girl for the Madrid fires. And this year, Breadfruit is also protesting the bad governance in the oil and gas madness. So Breadfruit's work reminds us that the Lord said that we do not live singlessly lives. I thought that one first thing with this Andaiye's collection of writings here and what you think about is about all of these multiple intersecting issues. I did not read all of the essays because I can't deal with all of this. It's very overwhelming. So, okay, I did not understand Mrs. Slang. I think Mrs. Slang or not. Mrs. Slang and George Brown story, which is very literary and so on. Which is supposed to do. And that is Breadfruit today and work. But I connected with section 2, sections 2 and 3, which is in part 3 of the political and the personal. And I prepared this presentation imagining some lessons since we are in the school learning, and I'm using this thing with us. First of all, lesson 1 is about using privilege. I did not know Andaiye had to deal with mental illness. Essay 17, Asylum Diary of the Last 7 Days in the Women's Psychiatric Ward, circa 1973. To me, striking, creative nonfiction. Andaiye writing differently from the author, letters, statements, and articles, but using this power of simple words and compelling phrases to talk about this experience of the conspiracy of mutual hearing with people who did not answer questions. And then the second story of F, A Daughter's Tale, which had this movement from hope to bitter old age. I would have met him many times in my life, and I would have sighed in sympathy as I realized that there are all these women looking after caregivers. I would have been glad for my privilege to choose to be a caregiver when my time came to be, unlike, say, many women who had little or no choice. You got it good. The woman in the market used to tell me when we talk about caregiving for elderly parents. The woman in the market, also looked after her mother and mother-in-law. And as she told me, and I quote, being on nothing. And the last thing I know was that she had these scars on her arms from a fire accident during the post-funeral rites, because her duties continued long after the caregiving. I prepared this presentation not having sacrificed anything else. I was listening to smooth classic from classic FM on the internet. I got it good. So I'm thinking of Andaiye also telling me I could have manners. So the lesson then that I've had is how to use this good and these manners to break the silence. And to do as Andaiye did, started about speaking truth forward in collective ways, right on my own collection. The second lesson is about writing, and I'm glad Salima brought that up because Salima can't say maybe, because Salima will be writing, and we all will be writing. That's our commitment, our sankal, as a result of this intention. But in November 1997, Andaiye asked me to write a column about domestic violence in November. I column started cues, and I bored people already about the story. Alyssa Trotz went to the book. She wrote about the editing that Andaiye demanded about those words. And so this article I have in my head is fine reading handwriting, marking, the marks on the graphs. But in my head, I also have a woman holding a clipping of that column, and she sought services from Help and Shelter the day after the column was published. You never know who will read and engage. And Andaiye and others wrote a lot more letters and statements. And I know that writing is difficult, it's tedious, it's hard. But we have to. As Tivia reminded me about something earlier, that in addition to, and we use writing in a different way, not just text, but in terms of how we package our conversations in the new media, we have to find ways of doing this because there's alternative media pushing other methods. So I just want to say that even so that we have to, as we do this work, think about how we write and produce and read and continue our ideas. And writing, even as if we do not publish immediately. Essay 24, and this trigger warning, people. Essay 24, sexual abuse and uses of power. With a date 2018, challenges a culture of tolerance of sexual violence. It was previously unpublished. In this essay, Andaiye includes her experience as a male colleague with the people. The political is in the first. Lesson 3 for me is talking across race, the Black and the Indian. Or I used to say fully, but Andaiye didn't want to use the word fully. Only want that here recognizes, but some of us use it, but she wouldn't use it. Essay 7, Not in My Name, calls out the allegedly African Guyanese freedom fighters who were terrorizing mostly Indian people. And I quote, "You are driving fear into children, women, and men who have done nothing to deserve it, and you cannot do so in my name." End of quote. Lesson 4 is about solidarity without asking. And this is about another one of Andaiye's writings, which was personal to me, which is not in the book. In May 2011, the then Minister of Human Services partnered with the alcohol industry to host a women's business event called Mission. The media asked me, noted my concerns about alcohol and violence against women. The then minister said I had no business telling women not to drink. I panicked because I thought I had crossed the line of male allyship. And there's always this nervous line when men get involved with feminist work and drink for people. And I wrote a letter in the paper which started with, and I quote, "I write very briefly in support of Vidyaratha Kissoon's call for feminism to be alcohol free. This is not because I don't like alcohol, I do. So what? Everyone who spends time with women who live with or die from violence committed by men knows whatever research findings to the contrary, anyone breaks up, that whatever causes male violence against women, alcohol often fuels it. End of quote. One Sunday afternoon in March this year, I visited a women's business expo hosted by the Children's Services in the town parking lot. There was a booth selling alcohol. I did not say anything because I could not organize a solidarity to make sure that again that I'm not trespassing a woman's right to sell and consume alcohol. Elizabeth writes that Andaiye left instructions that, and I quote from the book, all those things done for anybody, anywhere that says gender is binary, you reject. Amended where it is, and where it is a small point, but otherwise rejected. End of quote. And the writings in the book show that over time, Andaiye begins to make the LGBT community as one of the violence. So lesson 5, and I think this is what Lisa talked about, is Andaiye's lesson of the reflection and learning of rejecting and embracing as part of the world. Not because we are imperfect, but because we cannot know everything. And lesson 6 as I close off now, this year, 50 years as everyone's talked about, 50 years after Andaiye wrote this side of it, this year. The children dying in fires, the children lighting fires, people dying at home with no one realizing all the violence. That lesson from the asylum Andaiye had in 1973, which probably didn't even name there, this hopeful lesson of the conspiracy of mutual healing within this asylum.
Two more speakers and then we'll get into the so the only issue you guys just come here. I have had I'm Saxon, I'm find a place, and then I come. That was like shooting because on the way here, you're not fine ladies. I was a people. I don't have someone that lived a grassy life, and she and I you can come here and put the breakfast tree. I was happy thought I'm shivering, trying to sleep, but one of them not to be I should make it right clear that this physical person like me. So I really want to children also need to stay alive. The environment or should refer to it. So I like I read it because I'm not anymore. But I was speaking the word that she was using that was not justice. So she didn't even need to make that well hearing the environment or speaking of the environment. She was related to it and the work she was doing just for me the justice and social justice. He's hearing people are marginalized, sexually women, and those who face the issue that we can talk about. And so I leave it as that, and I'm still recovering from trying to figure this out too. But I'm so grateful to be here. I'm so grateful that I have a reference to rely on my work. Intersectionally, that is always learning, always unlearning. And to be with all of it. So is there online? I don't know. I don't see her evaluation. Wintress, if you're there with Wintress,
Yes, yeah.
you can unmute and speak. Hybrid.
Somebody's unmuted, but their microphone isn't going up or anything.
We can't unmute her. We could ask. Okay. You're there? Can unmute? Yeah, I think Suzanne is putting together. Yeah. I mean,
Don't forget, you know what, you talk to me.
It's a very boring thing.
Hello?
Good
afternoon. Hey. Good afternoon to everybody. Y'all hearing me? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Somehow or the other, y'all, I am getting y'all very, very low. Anyway, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry not to be at the center. I plan about this event, but not feeling too bright. So I want to take time off, if Suzanne didn't do it before, to welcome those of you who have never went into Red Thread into our center. I will be speaking a couple lines on Andaiye. Last night I didn't know where to start because Andaiye was bigger than life. I have come into contact with Andaiye when I was, just came back to Red Thread. And so she called Karen and told Karen, let somebody come and collect the modules. So Karen sent me and I collected the book. Then when I reached back to the center and I called, she said, Wintress, you know what is modules? And I said, no. And so she said, yeah, jackass. She was an inspiration to all of us. So I was told that I was mute. So I can't hear y'all. I asked if y'all was hearing me and I didn't get any feedback. Shona just tell me I'm mute. Y'all hearing me now? Nah, I'm not hearing them. Okay.
We can hear.
Okay, so yes, and she was a people's person. She was a grassroots person, although she was middle class, and although she was well educated, she was grassroots. She taught us how to stand up for ourselves and not to take rudeness from anybody, be it the president, be it who. She taught us how to stand up for ourselves once we are in the right. She taught us not because we are poor and grassroots that we should take run over from anybody. And so with that, she make us strong, independent. We call a spade, and who don't like it, tough. So even when we go to workshop and people are talking a language that we don't understand, we say, bring it down to our language, because if you don't bring it down to our language, then clearly you don't want grassroots in the room, and we will exit the room. Not that we impose our grassroots self on anybody, but we're grassroots. And so if you invite us to somewhere, then you have to talk our language. So she believed in us more than we believed in ourselves. For instance, when we were writing project proposal, she'd say, y'all could do it because y'all do the work. Y'all know exactly what's going on, so y'all could write the proposal. And the report. And we didn't believe we could have wrote it. But eventually we did. Sometimes when the going get hot with me and her, we will say, we know our weak point, and our weak point is liquor. So we'd say, oh, bye, I feel like drinking some cream liqueur. And she can say, she too. And so we would drink the cream liqueur, and we'd have an easy, cool working relationship after that because everybody relax. And I don't have enough words to really speak about Andaiye, the person she was. We often like to say at Red Thread, she could have been a rich, wealthy woman, a woman in position, but she chose not to be. She chose to be a political person. And when I said political, although she was from WPA party, she was really a political woman for the people. For instance, you can't talk no racial talk around Andaiye. You can't talk down to grassroots. You can't talk down to disabled. You can't do that. You and she got big problems, and she didn't stop talk to you. Andaiye was a woman of work, a woman of class, a woman who, if she said something, or word have weight. She is a woman of integrity, a woman of loyalty, and she's in everything. She always finds humor. I could go on and on and on to talk about Andaiye, but before she died, you know what? She wrote that book. The point is to change the world, and she wrote that book with us in mind. She wrote that book thinking of us to the last. Andaiye was a truly, truly, truly a very humane person. Thank you.
You and Fred sharing your personal stories about Andaiye. For a lot of us, we are not privileged to have that time. Okay, so we had a formal presentation. So at this point, we'll have a kind of open gap. We have some guiding questions, which I'll throw out there. And if people who spoke already want to start off that conversation, or not, but it's open to anybody here. And as well as people on the Zoom as well. So if you, as we think about these questions, if you have a contribution and you're online, you can just raise your hand and then we'll get to you in the So, all right. So some of us knew Andaiye personally, some of us have got to know her through the book. And some of us maybe haven't read the book, but we can still engage with the topics, right? So the first question to maybe think about, how do you think Andaiye's work helps us to think about how we work and live our own lives? So how do you think Andaiye's work helps us think about how we work and live our own lives? Are there any specific frameworks from Andaiye's way of working that you find useful, that you use? And how does that inform your understanding of gender and social change in your own life? So we'll start with those two and get to the third. So anybody?
Yeah, I think you say something that not anything they can perform it afterwards. It's just that my introduction to Andaiye, I think when she passed away, there was this like a memorial for her or at the Chung, I think it was. And I had absolutely no idea who this was. And while there was this big ceremony I didn't go to the ceremony, I was at work. But then a few years later, I started doing Caribbean history at sixth form, which is very different from Caribbean history up to fifth form.
because I was exposed to a lot more Caribbean writers. But then I went off into UV and I started finding more Guyanese writers there that more than I ever found here. I can't remember how, but I found Andaiye's book and I really just like, the point is to change the world. I didn't know anything else about her, and then there was this big funeral for her, and this was her. But what was striking for me in the book, and I read the book, I just read a couple of chapters because it's heavy to go through, is that there are some things she spoke about that I never thought about. I think in the very start of the book, she talks about unpaid work and how we navigate that. And that's something I never thought about. Like, it never occurred to me that a woman in a house is doing so much work and it's not considered as work in any way. So I was just reading through her book and thinking about things that I've never thought about. It just helps me to understand, I guess, life and existing in Guyana a bit more. Like I said, nothing profound. It's just, that's how it was for me.
Yeah. We're not grading. It's not profound and.
This is not an academic
Yeah.
discussion. Yeah, then this, I just wanted to talk about it now. I used to be scared of Andaiye because the same thing.
Yeah.
My first brother opened, I met up with the first one and shut it down. Until she asked me to write, I tell her that. And therefore, the one other thing she's going to do is not to stop writing about, even though she liked it. Is that she said not to not stop writing and whatever I did, just to keep my mouth open. So and as I said in that son, I say to any one of us who are learning or questioning, is don't worry if you don't sound, you don't have to be profound and deep now because that's your experience. Yeah.
There's somebody commenting in the chats, the Imani. I don't know if
She's on the International Caribbean International Domestic Workers. She got the link from, I think, Alice or someone.
Oh, she's asking
There,
the
some of them.
availability of the book. Oh, she said she was on mute. So Imani, you can go ahead and unmute.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Hello from Jamaica. Thanks so much. Yes, Alyssa Trotz had sent the email out to a Caribbean network of activists, feminists in the Caribbean. And she shared the story of sharing Andaiye's anthology in Brazil, which was a really inspiring and motivating experience of Black feminists owning their own power and being inspired by Andaiye herself. I did not know her, but as a Caribbean activist, as a feminist, I have heard so much about the great Andaiye. And having come to Red Thread a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, right? Joy?
Yeah.
On Wintress?
Yes, Imani.
It was amazing just looking at the posts that you guys had and just hearing the stories. I would love to read more about her, and in her own words. And I love what Wintress said about the fact that she was a middle-class woman who was very grassroots and understood where the power needed to come from and how to remind people about the power they already have, right? Because it's not as if she unearthed new power. It is already inside her body, but you have to really speak it. And so to me, it's powerful how Wintress described that despite, not despite, even with her own background and what she could have done, so to speak, in getting official position and everything, she continued to work in a committed way and in a revolutionary way, And so I wanted to get a copy of the anthology to read her own words and how she saw things. I have a middle-class background too, and I'm a social justice advocate. And so it just, in looking at the Caribbean, and Guyana is certainly a part of the Caribbean with a shared history, there's so much more we can do once we come together. And so to me, as we stand on the shoulders of powerful rebel women like Andaiye, we have to really learn and understand how she saw things so we can take it further and build on it. Thus my asking as to how we could possibly buy a copy of the book, even if it's not yet published in other countries.
Thank
you.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Imani. So I think Elisa Trotz is on to, the editor of the book, and she can answer the question about where and how you can, the people who want to purchase it, it's online, I think, it's not really available yet in Guyana. So Alyssa, if you want to put that in the chat as well as maybe unmute and say.
Hi, everyone. I'll put it in the chat. There's so much one could say, but I'm just so grateful to you all for doing this. I don't want to speak today. I'm just here to hear how everyone is making use of Andaiye's work. This is incredible. So I'm just going to put stuff in the chat and see any talking space for all of you.
And can I say one more thing? This is Imani again. I'm sorry. So I currently work as the Caribbean coordinator for the International Domestic Workers Federation. And last year, so we have 3 affiliates in the Caribbean, one in Jamaica, the Jamaica Household Workers Union, one in Antigua and Barbuda, and one in Trinidad and Tobago. We're working with Red Thread, with Joy and Suzanne and the team to establish its own association focused on domestic workers, yeah? And other countries as well. We had a powerful conference last year in Jamaica where close to 40 domestic workers and union organizers came along the same kind of work. So that's even why it's more important to me in reading Andaiye's work. So we really build on, you know, and move things forward in a very practical and pragmatic way that is sustained changes as we change the system for better justice and rights and equality.
Okay. Anybody else want to say anything about how learnings from Andaiye's work and how that has helped them in their own work and how they live their own life?
All right. I started Breadfruit in 2005 when we had this major flood. I never knew who was Andaiye because at that time she wasn't at the center. It was mostly Joy and so on. But at that time, Breadfruit had a literacy class where I used to cook for the children for 150 people. And I used to be hearing about this Andaiye and our kitchen was down to the bathroom. So a day she came into the office and I was cooking at the time and I hear, and I run to the front and I peek and I said, I don't know the individual. So when I think Joy or somebody came to the back and I said, who is Andaiye? And they come to and say, Andaiye, so that I was kind of ashamed because I didn't expect her to say that. So I said, who's Susan? Let her come. I come and I peep in coming through. And then she said, oh, so do you want to know who's Andaiye? I said, yes. I said, well, I hear a lot about it. People hearing about Andaiye and I just want to know who the Andaiye. So you know, see who's Andaiye, so yes. As I get more into Breadfruit, writing is not my thing. I will talk, but when it comes to putting it into writing, not my thing. So when I get into Breadfruit permanently, she asked us to do a letter because something I think it's the back, something, can't remember exactly. So I said, she said, everybody come up with a point. And I said before, I sit down in the corner here and I ain't doing nothing. But I just take in. And she said, so now what you have there? I said, she said, why? I said, I don't know how to write it. She said, what do you mean you don't need to know how to write? I said, well, I can think. I can say what I want to say, but to put it on paper is one of the hardest things for me. So she said, this is what you're going to do. Get a box, put it next to you. Every time you think of something, jot it on the paper, throw it in the box. Every time, if you think all day about something, just jot it down, put it in the box. And then when you don't even put it together, and you say what you want to say, you have your little game and for to do. So that is how I started to learning how to write a little tablet, writing was like. But indeed, Andaiye was a really phenomenal woman. She taught me a lot. She taught me how to. And even though I was a breaker, domestic worker, I never knew what was domestic worker. I was a domestic worker. I'm still a domestic worker. I never knew that I was a domestic worker. So when the domestic worker had this course for Barbie, I was passing and she thought, use the domestic work. So, and I passed, so I'm not knowing I'm a domestic worker and don't even know that. A couple of days after, when everybody done gone to Barbados or something, I said, I had a spoke thing. We had a discussion. I said, I had a spoke thing. In fact, we always exist. So when I'm not working, but I spoke, I did, and he said that was the next thing. But say you're that bad. You know, but the right word was domestic word. And from then on, then I started to learn about the wage work that women do in the home, which we never knew that we doing so much in the home, but we never been paid for it. And we see that no kind of work, because I work at home, but we never see it as the work that we do every day to keep the family going over and over. So she really was an inspiration to a lot of people who may know her or who may not know her. And every time I look at this picture, I say, why? That's all. Because she was really, really an inspiration to me, you know, it changed my life a lot. Great enough and understanding that when we talk about the politics, it's not a part of politics, because politics is more daily lives, all exist on a day-to-day basis. So it's really, really phenomenal.
Anybody else? I know you
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna read the comments, but go ahead.
Proceed then. Prior to the book, where you talk about NGO and aid and how you can become like corrupt and, you know, all of it. And as someone that started the NGO, you know, both my work to it, I am taking that part of extremely. I think I told you that there's like it's not in my grandma, she but I never had a conversation or an interaction with my grandmother that she did mention red thread. Every single time you go to this room, how all of our red thread did this, she did this training red thread. And so it was kind of like inspired because my grandmother had to leave to go to Venezuela to escape domestic violence. And then she flew back to land. And to know that there was a space that accepted her, that allowed her to speak. And she loved talking, she loved organizing, she loved, was very much into her church, leading her women's group and all of that. But as a young person now, someone that understands how organizations work, to have her feel so special and honored is something that I want to do with my organization. Because again, she couldn't go out the day without mentioning how honored she felt being a part of this organization, how much she would help with other people because she was able to share her story as a domestic survivor. And similarly, unpaid work and the work that women in my family, you know, they're involved in a lot of the same thing, unpaid work, even at the housewife work. And you go out and they tell you, like, make sure that you take education, no ball, no ball, and that's exactly, I mean, like, it's exactly. But I remember, like, my grandmother and me again, like, she used to work for, these wealthy people, like, in Delaware, me and her going, and she would say that she liked the baby compared to everybody because with usually she knows that when she says sit down one stays, I will sit down and I wouldn't like trouble anything. But that type of domestic work, paid work, I really much honored because I see my family next to me. Totally act and this class so us like going to Delaware, cleaning people's houses and kind of like you try not to touch anything, I look at anything too, like because you don't want it to break for the person to get in trouble. So I hope that I think everything is in the book and everything like as a tool. It's definitely a tool for like young people from communities and as much as it is for that work on so that for somebody that you don't really know what you're getting yourself. Nonprofit work and you can burn yourself out, but I think using the tool is I guess it's a solution in a sense, or it's a really good guide.
Wilbert, just unmute it. Wilbert, you can go ahead. Can you hear us, Wilbert? Go ahead.
Yeah, oh, sorry about that. I can hear you. I know, and I don't know Andaiye as Andaiye. I know her as Sandra Williams. And she used to teach me French at Charleston Government Secondary School. Are you hearing me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, she used to teach me French at Charleston Government Secondary School. And then I have left Guyana in the early 70s, but I still follow Guyana politics, so to speak. I do collect a library I have with all Guyanese authors. So she appeared with her book there, you know what I mean? But that's all I know about her, so to speak. I'm into her politics, so to speak, you know what I mean? So that's it for my end of the aisle. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Alyssa, the advice from Andaiye, Susan was something that Andaiye learned from some James, who said that her first complex on women's space came about because CLR James said, put every idea on a piece of paper and put it in a box. One day you will open the box and the essay will be there. And she said she wished she could be in Guyana about it.
Yes, I might try that.
Put it in a box, yeah.
If you're doing something, better project or anything, she always tell you what you understand. Don't try to do it for other people, however you understand it to do it. And when you take the work, you go through it with you, you get back, and then you make it. So this is what we do. So it really taught us your friend, like being around her.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like you can't really talk about Andaiye without talking about Breadfruit as a whole, because I mean she started this organization and her impact, like I think what Breadfruit is now and the people, how you all are now, it's such a clear reflection and so much testimony to the work she did in terms of the empowerment. Like the Breadfruit to me now, like especially I mean, not only but the response to the fire issue and thinking about how everybody else is responding, how Breadfruit is responding is so very different because it takes all the structural state violence that doesn't get acknowledged into consideration. It takes all the nuances of gender and power that like you know about this girl and the big man, and we hearing everything about the girl and she's one that getting the charges, right? And the big man scot free, and so the power always thinking about power. I think is a lesson I got from and the structural thing, like it's not just the individual to look at other courses which impact our lives and which have a lot of things are shaping what happens and who gets justice, who doesn't get justice, who gets the opportunities. So I think for me, like that's something that I always remember and take and the model to starting where people are at, and doing the work in the community, grounding in the community. Because I came to Red Thread and saw what was explaining the Domestic Violence Act, the law, and getting people in communities to understand it. And I copy that model when I do sexual reproductive health work, environmental work. It's the same, it's like the model that I see at Red Thread that makes sense, and it's empowering grassroots people and starting. And that's the model that I am literally copied and pasted on different topics. And so that's a little bit for me about how that frames how I live my life and do the work that I do. But other people,
There's a hand up, Janice, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I just want to share a little bit about Red Thread in my life, outside of, Andaiye in my life outside of Red Thread. And this speaks to the person who was extremely caring and concerned. I took care of my mother, who was in bed for 9 years. And many mornings, Andaiye and I shared a call. She was there as my support. She didn't question, but she listened, she gave advice. I remember I'd gone to a meeting somewhere, and when I came back, she said, you see, you could go, because I was afraid to travel and not be there for my mother. And this went on for many years. There would be a call in the morning. I remember Alyssa was working with Andaiye on her book one day, and she was calling for Andaiye, and Andaiye said, I'm talking to Janice Jackson, and that was the end of that. Then came the time when her mom got ill, and the support changed in the other direction, where I was there for her, took her mother to the doctor, listened to whatever was said, and then relayed the results to Andaiye. She was someone who was very sensitive to the role of caregivers. And in that aspect, it helped her when she became responsible for her mom. So Andaiye was more than Red Thread, more than organizations. First, and I think first and foremost, she was just a caring human being. Thank you.
Just have to Janice support, because the story of M's daughter, the other kind of work that's the wage this is here. There's no, there's no some stuff there. And I work very close to all of the, I think one of the stuff that we don't have guys that said something that perhaps Andaiye sensitivity to what other people. What I probably about that was need is that so action was it's a good thing I was aware that in the listing of domestic violence that figure is all the messages coming here living. When it came my turn, I mean, I made the choice, it was still not easy. That it was not difficult because even though it might not have been deliberate intention, I think what Janice just said is it's not because there's anything here, really, because I was aware of it. And I'm very grateful that I have to name Janice one of the past. A lot of time, so and I don't think I wrote as a thinking of this art is or what I'm saying the time I started doing things with the project. But why don't hire somebody? Because the idea is I can go and get better paid work than paying somebody who would do the work. Then when it came to my mother, I got a nurse. And one of my a man who gets a lot of money, his asked me, well, that's very expensive how to get a here. And I said, no more expensive than paying for loans. Right? And that is when I said, they're doing that work. No, we're not doing the work. So it's just thinking, and again, this is other dimensions where the person is how in the end, that became very personal about the way I'm dealing with this expectation that women have to do this and be rough. Men can choose, men can get praises. Now the other has come to someone being praised a lot. And I know that many women did it, and if the women there said they would be like, oh God, she can't do it. But I would say, so this is something that I thought of personal. And as a conversation, to talk about caring and caregiving, which is about a lot. And again, that's a kind of like a different conversation we take here outside of changing problems like this thing, that's this or so on, that that this theory is what going on, how do we talk about it, how do we value it? And it's not just about the secret of patients, how do you families and the analysis. And that was one of the questions.
My grandma, she's still alive, and she has she's forgetful, she's can't make herself well, right? When this started, it was strange, and then I became the one who's like making sure she paid, making sure she do exercise. Then I went and studied and came back home. But in that period of study, my mother was the one who take it up, and it was just a given. It wasn't no discussion between her and my father, whatever. Right? So when I came home, they're like, when you coming home, come make kids take care of your child. Right? When you come take care of your child. So I coming home and it was different because she physically changed. I had to adapt to seeing her differently now because she used a lot of ways to do things. But yeah, my mother was frustrated. She would vent like, oh, if she was getting extra money from her father and all of that, right? Now, me and my father have our challenges as well. So I had to a point where I sit him down and said, no, this is not my work. This is not my work. You're going to do X, Y, days, I will do X, Y, days. I had to be bold and very direct. And he did it. He did it. Maybe not to my life. He did it. Now that I'm engaging for this studies, that kind of takes away some amount of time. And when we talk to whichever extended family member, he is speaking that out. He's doing that. My mother is not, anybody taking care of her. So he's doing that. But still not how I would like. But it's love in that way. But as I mentioned, we have Breadfruit Collective from Wintress. Because I know a little bit about Breadfruit, and I came across this activity to have time analysis of women's work, men's work. And it is something I adopted in my class. And in one assessment, I did notice students said, wow, usually stay at home and get to be cleaning, but now he's going to take us on that, so adapting those strategies for bringing awareness, because listening to the Caesar story, that's still wow. In this day and age, the best household work is still not valued. How much power we have to hold on to,
And it isn't just the manual work, it's a psychological work. Because I'm emotional, but my days, for example, I'm a sister, so my days are not always my own. Our mind is constantly what needs to be done tomorrow. So I know sometimes when we talk about self-care and disconnected and you're advised to stay in the moment, things like that's it's something you need to practice, but it's hard to disconnect when you have a human being depending on to go somewhere, for their nourishment, for their entertainment, because they need to be entertained. So it's like constantly something has to be planned. And I think that's something that also is something when it comes to recognizing persons who have caregiving. It means more washing and physical labor, but the mental labor that goes into that. And not everyone has a luxury to disconnect.
Okay, I would say on the caregiving thing is, so you said, as a human, I mean, so even if it's not human, right? It's not. Right? As a single or a woman that doesn't have children chose not to have children, right? On the flip side of that, I get asked a lot, and women like, who's gonna take care of you when you get older? You don't have no children, and that goes back to as well. I think look at how Andaiye as another, woman in society which says, biology definitely and you have an interest and you have and like see how she lived her life and the power of community and the I think how we show up in community and the co-creation aspect of it. Like it's inspirational and comforting to look at her and her life as okay, you don't have to have a child if you get sick, you can still have people like a community that could be looking out for you because that's definitely something that she had. But on the flip side of caregiving. Yes.
On the point of imposter syndrome, I think I'll use my phone now.
So I'm Janan, and I'm interested in sexual environmentalism and just like gender dynamics in Guyana. And I lived a good chunk of my life in West Africa, and when I moved back to Guyana, like all of the time learning about like Caribbean history and Caribbean studies in class. So I did my tertiary education in the Caribbean as well, and it's like you're learning at an academic level and you're learning a lot more about Caribbean leaders. Like I remember learning about like Maurice Bishop and what he did in Grenada. And I remember being completely blown away at the fact that, there was a man, wine, and he had all of these ideas that are very valid to stage funded. And I just remember I read about him, I read the book of Rodney, and kind of getting more familiar with some region leaders that they were doing, well, that were unable to be done. And I came home, and just like Kitani, it was when Andaiye had passed. And I'm like, who is this? And I came home, people were like, this thing. And I was like, that was human being came to Guyana. And I thought this just been for so long in my life. And I think I did a bit of reading on the work that she had done, and Kitani gave me her book. This is where my bookmark is, but I have notes. And but I think just being a young Guyanese living in our society, just like it got so many questions about like where things went wrong and what does a future look like that encompasses all of the trials and tribulations that Guyana goes through. And I have an environment back. And throughout my studies, there's rarely an overlap between the social issues that we have. And in Guyana, for me, that is very clear, the link that we have between the environments and the society in general. I just going to that phase of expression. I just feel this lost and like why is no one like why can't I see this or like where's the work? And so like when I started reading more about Andaiye's work, it just became clear that here the ideas that I'm having they're not new. And not that the answer, like no one's ever thought of the answers because there's so many layers for us to jump through, but
just because we haven't seen it as yet doesn't mean that there's no reason to not have hope. Or like I can find myself or find like I have community in the works of others that have come before and somehow try to live in that and like find spaces like this where we can have conversations that I think I be having alone in my head. So that is how I think I have her work can guide me in because as Christine was saying, her work is intersectional. It's all of the things that young people like we need in there, also with race, class, and just everything under the sun that you rarely see put into practice. Sorry, and that was that. Sometimes it's like for me, lots of theories is like very academic and theoretical. So also being able to read work that's practical and like grounded in like physical structures of red thread that are actually doing things. Oh, that's another reason to get like, there are things that are happening. And it's not just me.
There's a comment on Zoom from Levi Gaiman in the UK. He said that there's a cluster of comrades reading about Andaiye, Claudia Jones, Jacqueline Kreft, and Suzanne there, and others. They're reading it at the University of Liverpool, and it's a diverse diasporic neighborhood that has been the site of uprisings against cultural racism and police brutality, as well as where Liverpool's Caribbean Community Center is. So they've taken that work and they're using it out there as well.
Right, so just so I think so I read this piece in a very first, I didn't quite understand it. I think what Tivia needs to say just now about the story, right? Where and I had written, I think this is probably known to people, but part 3, the political and the personal, is based on the view that the personal is not just personal. The story of each of us, if we tell it true, carries in it everybody's story. And our collective stories carry in them the populations of the whole society. And when I read this last night, I didn't quite understand what it meant. I think I listened to what they've been saying. And that was came back again. And I got a book and I was sure. I confess something because of Eugene's thing. I have to confess that I read the PDF, which we got from various sources. I got here, I'm sure I'm glad we have bought books.
Yes, I would like to. I'm sorry.
Please go ahead.
My name is Pierre Labossière, and I'm a member of I'm co-founder of the Haiti Action Committee, also a member, of course. And I had the pleasure, first of all, thank you for this invitation. I really appreciate being and listening to the presentations, various presentations, and raising up the name of Andaiye. Andaiye is someone who's so very close to my heart. And I visited Guyana in 2005 during the commemoration of Dr. Walter Wadney at the time. And so Andaiye, her work on Haiti has been just tremendous. Her solidarity work with the Haitian people has been tremendous. Right after the coup of 2004, she, against President Aristide, Andaiye, Margaret Prescott, Selma James, Global Women's Strike, Red Thread, they stood very strongly in solidarity with the Haitian people and made sure that CARICOM would get the latest information about what was going on, and so that CARICOM could stand in strong solidarity with the people of Haiti. I credit Andaiye a lot with all this work that allowed for CARICOM to get a true picture of what was happening and to refuse to recognize the coup d'etat government that the US, France, and Canada had imposed on the Haitian people. So basically it was the CARICOM countries. You had Cuba and Venezuela who stood in opposition. Other than that, most of the countries of South and Central America sent troops there to make sure that the coup d'etat succeeded against the Haitian people. On a personal level, I was so pleased to be with Andaiye in Haiti as well in 2006. And Andaiye is someone who really is very caring person, and I mention her in the present, using the present tense, because her spirit, I feel, is very strongly there with us. And Andaiye, and I'll give you this tidbit and I'll stop. There were two Haitian women who were very strong leaders of the grassroots movement during the coup, and they had managed to escape Haiti. I forgot which island in the Caribbean that they got to, and they were arrested and were going to be deported back to Haiti, only in a matter of hours. So I managed to get a hold of Margaret Prescott, who got a hold of Andaiye, and Andaiye was in a very important meeting. Right away, she dropped everything, made all the necessary calls, and got the women not only out of the jail in that country that they were in, but she got them to go to, I believe, to St. Vincent, where the Prime Minister, Ralph Gonsalves, actually granted them all the necessary documents so they could come there. So I'm telling you this because it was a matter of 2 hours they had as a window not to go back to Haiti, because had they gone back, I do believe they would have been killed right then and there. And so every time I think of Andaiye, for so many things, and her writing, the point is to change the world, is so profound and means so much to me personally, and also to so many of you in Guyana and to various people throughout the world. So long live Andaiye. Thank you for all the great work, and thank you all for continuing the work in the spirit of Andaiye and moving forward. Forward ever, backward never. Thank you all.
I think that's another good point. I'm so glad here spoke, because the thing about Andaiye is she had that regional mindset. It was never just Guyana. You start with where you are, but she always had this sense of being a Caribbean citizen and concern and taking action in solidarity and in community with other feminist women, grassroots women who were dealing with Haiti, and was in particular very close to her heart. But yeah, that regional concern, that's something that I have sometimes challenges remembering that, but it's good to have that.
And it wasn't just a regional, because she mentioned so much like the structural justice program.
Yes.
And that Guyana is a small fish in a larger global imperial relationship. And what that means for, like, you as a person, as an individual in a wider community, and how all these systems are connected. And I really like how Writers spoke to that, because it's, for me, the irony is some of those same international organizations right now fund programs or actions around empowerment of women. And because I have this knowledge from what she's written, and I'm a lot more aware of what those systems are like, it's like, no, you don't need to be doing programs, you need to be doing reparations, because some of our disappointment, some of the violence we face in women in Guyana is directly related to actions your organization has taken years ago. And so to just come with these little things, workshops, then related violence in a bigger system of violence, it's like, it's PR, it's insulting, right? And it's just like, the extractive companies and environmental projects, it's insulting, right? How do they acknowledge their role in the global system of harm? And I'm writing to author that insight, and it can also you if you read this book, the language, the historical background, and how to interrogate what we see now. And how we can interrogate the people who take up space a lot of the time. Right? And I started challenging see that.
Yeah. I think, thinking about what you just said and what just like the fact that, like, why is it that for young people well, even, and like, so many people are only hearing about Andaiye and her work after she died. And out of Guyana, like, you know, like, what is, like, there's a reason, right? That there's a reason we don't learn about Andaiye and what's Rodney and all these other figures in school, right? Why? Like, why don't they want us to learn this? Like, what change in society is right?
Everything, yeah. And I think too, like I said, running at one point, I feel like my feminism came from a heart place of discovery. And that's why for me personally, I'm taking the effort to expose my daughter to certain spaces and have certain conversations with her. And I don't think it's because my parents told me to do it. It was that my parents were caught up with other things to have those conversations. But there were certain things that I did about this power home function that was not traditional. And that I think them being busy also gave me the space to explore. Because I didn't have anybody watching what I was reading, what I was looking at. Right? So there was some benefit in having that freedom. But I think, as I said, my journey was way too long and way too hard because it felt for a very long time being on board. Because it didn't feel like it was connected to anyone or anything, but you just trying to figure things out in the room. And I'm hoping as Breadfruit Collective and other organizations are able to think, yes, we do work, we do activism, we advocate, but how do we maintain connection with the community? And how do we include new people in our communities? I don't think we should be in a place where people are so disconnected from what's going on around. We don't know what people are the only ones trying to advocate. Because at the end of the day, you might have a handful of people making a waves. Like all things needed is so much. Nothing that needs to work, that needs to be back from voluntary. But you have so many people in Guyana safeguarding and the need to benefit, but we don't even know how that is benefit. And there's something wrong, I think, we don't know, like how did we get strikes or how did we get systems changed? And we benefited from it, but we don't have anything about our history and how we got where we are. And because we don't have a clue about our history, we can't take lessons from that. We can't move forward. Like one thing about that was so fascinating to me was the streets, right? This was rebellion. And the way housewives, civil workers, boxside workers, taxi drivers, linden suburbans, how these people organize. Because for a long time, we're thinking guys who don't know what organize. So we have history that shows that we have a history. We have a history of rebellion. Something happened that I think we've gotten restricted, but I think we can get up to that place.
And just adding to that, I mean, I know teaching is late because it starts for anybody to educate on this, but at least I know I'm teaching in the gender studies. I know he's the one to touch on it, but we do address women, powerful women in Guyana, feminists in Guyana. We do teach feminism for LGBT. And one of our courses has over 100 students, gender development courses. I don't know if you want to briefly touch on that.
Yeah, definitely. What I try to do is bring that practical element with scenarios, encourage engagement. And this book, this section definitely goes outline. So I'm looking forward to the new academic year, how they are engaging with us.
So at least a few sheets being taught. Yeah.
So thank you for reminding me. So the Zoom is gonna go off. We have 10 more official minutes for the Zoom people. So maybe we can give them if anybody who's on Zoom wants to, because we can stay here and continue chatting beyond free. But if anybody online has anything, and again, you know, it was about how they can unmute it. So it was about, you know, how Andaiye's work helps you live your life, comes to your work. And then the final question, what do we learn from, and Salima, I think, started talking about this, what have we learned from previous efforts to organize around gender justice, any other kind of social justice issue, and because we don't have to start from scratch, right? We have models, we have strategies that have succeeded. So what are we learning? What should we take forward? What should we do? Not everything that worked then will work now, but so if we can think about that as we think about wrapping up and moving forward. And so anybody on Zoom wants to take the next 8 minutes before we have to say goodbye to you. Well, anyway, let's keep talking here. So what can we learn from the previous efforts that have been made in terms of organizing, specifically around gender justice, but in intersectional terms as well.
Want to make an assumption that we don't care, especially like in a climate environment space, like it's like, oh, they don't care, so they should care about it too. But that's exactly what they should care about. So like when we talk about this issues, like how do you bring it to somebody? They care about food, they care about living healthy and healthy community, they care about their water, they care about their kids having proper education. So I think about when you're bringing these topics to people, like how do you make it relatable to them? Because I think it's a false idea to assume that people don't care about what's happening. So for example, in Guyana with oil and gas, they do care, but a lot of times they feel scared to speak out, or they think that you have to be at a certain level in terms of education to be able to speak out. Because I take whenever I take taxi, I like to be the boss because I like being with regular people and they would be talking, and I would try to use the opportunity to talk about the environment and gender diversity and mental health. And their perspectives are very much valid and thought-provoking and all these things, but I think it's how we go about doing it. And for me, with Breadfruit Collective, I always try to make it as inclusive as possible, as welcoming, as accessible to as many people as far wide as can. And I know going back to the environmental side and thinking about how we organize, thinking about seminars and once the week is connecting the kind of fights that's happening individually.
So I know that one challenge is that so again, this is what the point is to change the world and show that Andaiye and so many others who colleagues, think about to Janice, there's others who are working that they're so it seems that anyone who's interested in this change, you have this difficult thing of having to operate at different levels. I use the word level wrong, I gave that in my error are different settings. So I know that when I found myself, I could have found myself in academic settings, and I had to step back because I just didn't understand all some of this. But of course, somebody at that kind of could write or speak out, and said, seeing me, I should write that I didn't speak of that anyone could even understand. And that is an art. You're not using big words, you're not using words like agents, so on, right? Right? Which don't mean that, so that ability to that kind of intelligence and ability, I don't even know how to build that. And I think first of all, that's a lesson I learned, right through that. It's a lesson of learning that is even more neat because we're not able to multiple modes of communication, right? So not just like writing design text, right? you know, social people out, everyone's where all where else, so these things right? So people are watching videos of, you know, people crossing their line, right? So on, and I'm glad to get into that space, right? So, and that is difficult and training, which where you have to be. Then there's also a thing of where you have to do and reflect, and that, to me, that cycle of doing and reflecting and realize what you have to do, because again, it's symbolic. When Andaiye then writes, so he excluded, they weren't thinking about the host, right? Got out the class, and so it's how you unintentionally, not deliberately, but you get unintentionally exclude people from it down, depending on it might not be. And there's a whole set of discussion around it. And this thing about connecting about the process of the whole above, there's another privilege in yesterday where, as I'm writing this and reading the book and everything, 69-year-old woman who comes every week to connect her Jews said, you know, explains to me, she has that trouble with that. I tried to tell her how to go pick it with student services. She's telling me how things bad go based on her doing her, you know, I like trying to connect that to this. I think, what am I supposed to do? First of all, yeah, I'm supposed to do that. You know, she can come to this space to be that. You know, she can come to the third, right? Do that. But then, it's picketing, it's, you know, it's all of these things, which you say to the woman who come from picket, who go to the Ministry of Services and will be treated by the social workers, so on. In a space where when you dare to question it now, there are all these agents and friends and so who are not saying, hey, you know, you don't have to be treated this way. If we're going to be talking about the conspiracy of the mutual theory, what does it mean for those people who are the agents of the state who are not given? So it's all these things that looking at about the Andaiye start 1973, regards analysis and so on, in that war in 1973 was happening with them too. Because that they were necessarily background in the system that create them and put them there. So just these things that, and again, you know, this labor, this intellectual thing, like we're watching it on Netflix, so which probably Andaiye didn't have. I don't know. I mean, it's up there. No, I think I've heard it. So yeah, so okay, you know, yeah.
So I'm just we just need to wrap up. People.
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody on Zoom wants to give any final comments. Oh, Alyssa, Dr. Trust, they're asking if you can please give a
I don't want to say anything here.
Probably cuts out.
Or next, or when she called me, we can do another thing, we can do part two.
She there? No, she dropped out. Right, so thank you everyone on Zoom for joining us. We'll have definitely more events and follow-up from this. So we'll keep you posted and we will share information as it emerges. So thank you so much for joining us.